Get a degree, they said. It's the only way to land a decent job, they said. What they didn't say was how long you'd be paying for it, especially with what you'd likely be earning after you graduate. That is, of course, assuming you find work at all. Now, I'm not saying that university, or for my American audience, college, is a bad decision. It just shouldn't be a burden you spend the next few decades dealing with. If we're to invest in a well-educated workforce, we ought to at least make their task a little easier. Just finishing a degree is already hard enough as is. Student debt has become so normalized that it's treated like a tutorial for the mortgage you'll inevitably have later on. When tuitions are so expensive that you need to sell one of your kidneys in order to pay for it, the least they can do is teach you how to perform the surgery, am I right? And that's not even accounting for all the additional costs, such as lab fees for labs that haven't functioned properly since 1997, admin fees for who the bloody hell knows, and parking permits, which cost about as much as the fine you get for not using them. And of course, let's not forget textbooks, which they insist you always buy the most up-to-date version of, even if the only revision that's been made in the last 10 years is the date written on the cover. But it's an investment in your future, they'll say. What future is that exactly? Debt, stress, and being stuck working as a barista despite your anthropology degree? We often forget that there's plenty of other options after high school, like trades or 6-month certificates. A lot of people still look down their noses at unskilled professions though, mostly out of snobbery or bitterness. What, are you jealous that the tradie you hired to simply paint walls is earning more than your whole post-grad cohort? Maybe you should have studied a painting style other than Impressionism. But this is merely a symptom of a bigger problem, which is that the employment prospects of your degree can often be quite vague. And who knows what the market will end up looking like after the few years it's taken for you to graduate. Most likely, it'll consist of entry-level roles that somehow require 3 to 5 years of experience, or jobs that are fast being replaced by AI. How has it become expected that education is the only path to decent paying work, which it often isn't, while truly decent paying work, hard as that is to find, is what you'll need to pay it off afterwards? Look, education is a work expense, yes? A requirement for pretty much every white-collar career, but are loan repayments tax deductible? Nope, that would make way too much sense. And don't even get me started on all the countries who've made it free altogether, proving that investing in the education of your population is both worth doing and very much possible. But still, there's always people who'll claim that it'll cost the taxpayer too much. Sure, with the fees universities are currently charging. You'd therefore think that for what they charge, their campuses would be packed with luxuries, right? Think again. While you're dealing with crumbling lecture halls with heating that doesn't work, or student portals that crash harder than a budget airline site during holiday season, vice-chancellors are making 7 figures, logos are constantly being updated to look even worse, and shiny new business schools are being built that are too expensive for most students to even set foot in. So as always, why is this a thing? Because higher education is a business, not a public service. Because attaining skills and knowledge to make yourself more employable requires the formal recognition of an overpriced piece of paper. Because learning is a privilege, not a right. And because it's easier to drive your workforce harder when they're saddled with yet another financial burden. At the end of the day, education is extremely important. But if we're to respect that fact, we should try not to punish those who seek it. As much as we need doctors and lawyers, we also need teachers and nurses, who aren't paid nearly as much, might I add. If half the work is getting the degree in the first place, and there's those of us who are willing to keep holding society together, then we shouldn't bankrupt them for having the guts to go the distance. Also, if a particular field of study has an increasingly shrinking job market, maybe consider downsizing the department instead of luring in more clueless 19-year-olds who thought an arts degree was their ticket to making their passion their career. Whoops, might have just told on myself there. Anyway, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment detailing your struggles with student debt, or the post-graduation job market. Thanks for watching, and remember, whoever said education is a walk in the park clearly left out the word Jurassic.